Well, I got to confess, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. There's a place here in the Philippines that I consider to be the Beverly Hills of the Philippines. And I've never explored it because I managed to stop myself before getting started because I always thought I would never be able to afford it. Well, I believe I've been proven wrong. If you want to find out where I'm talking about, it's right coming up right now in the video. Alrighty, so like I said before in the introduction, I am back with my friend Daryl. And Daryl was on the channel maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
And we were talking about what a super minimalist you are and how you've managed to pull off living here in the Philippines for about 600 bucks a month.
Yes.
And the tricks of the trade that you use to make that happen. So we're not going to talk about that again. But we are going to flip it over and talk about what I've always perceived as one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive places in the Philippines, that being BGC and Makati. Now, you've been in the Philippines for 3 years and you've done a lot of traveling. And you were recently over in Makati, and I've never been there. I figured, what the hell would I go there for? In my head, it was the Beverly Hills of the Philippines, and it was going to be astronomical. And
why would you go there?
Why? Yeah. Why bother? You know, me and my little Social Security check. Tell me and tell everybody watching this right now what you found to be true as of today in Makati, and maybe associate it with what it was like a year ago and what changed.
Well, what surprised me, the first thing was the cost of food, because being in Makati, think of being in San Francisco back in the day when it was nice, where you got a lot of tall buildings around and there's little, restaurants everywhere on every block. And then you walk, I think I walked about 3/4 of a mile, and I entered this shopping center. That shopping center ended up being 4 shopping centers interconnected by a walkway above the street level with cover for rain. And they went on for about a mile. Now, it sounds kind of like, okay, right, Daryl. But imagine these places hold 2,000 stores.
Wow.
Some of them are restaurants, some of them are big supermarkets. The largest Louis Vuitton store I've ever seen was there. I've been to the one in San Francisco, Beverly Hills, San Diego. It is bigger. Burberry was right next door. Tiffany's, Mont Blanc, luggage. It's all there. And this is the kind of neighborhood that it is. Yet you can walk about 30 yards away and there's a food court. And the food court, the average meal may be 250 pesos. And when you see what it is, you know that you're going to be full on that meal. It's not a couple of little pieces of sushi for 250. It's a full-on meal. For
those that don't know, how much is 250 pesos?
It's about 450 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's with an exchange rate of, say, somewhere around 55 pesos to the dollar.
Fair enough.
And I will try to give both of those. If I forget,
I'll remind you.
Please remind me. So my friend who invited me there, he said, Daryl, I can show you where you can eat on $10 a day. And I'm thinking, I've got a big appetite. That's not going to work out. And it did. And it worked out. And when I did have to eat 2 meals, I was still under 13 or 14 bucks a day. And that's eating all of my meals out, every single one of them. And in the morning, I would go down and they would have these little places there. And I would buy eggs and Hungarian sausage, and I would take it back up and I would eat all I could eat, and it would be less than 100 pesos. I think 3 sausages, which would be over a 1/4 pound of sausages, more like 1/3 of a pound, and 3 eggs. You're talking 80, 90 pesos. I mean, once you eat, how much can you eat? That is your budget. That's just what it is. Now, if you want to go to Ruth Chris, Ruth Chris is not that far away.
And that's available there?
Absolutely.
They have a Ruth Chris
there is a literal Ruth Chris.
Okay.
It's there. Yeah, look it up, Ruth Chris, and you'll see the neighborhood and the area that I was in.
And you'll see the menu and the prices and all that good stuff, right? Okay. What about infrastructure? What about transportation?
The infrastructure was you hardly see any cracks anywhere in the sidewalks. And even if it is, it's not, you could run a wheelchair on it. It's got the ADA ramps and all those types of things. So, and it's not that crowded. I mean, I took grabs wherever I wanted to go if I didn't walk. And there was little or no traffic. Once you got outside and you're getting onto the highway to go to Pasay or Quezon City or wherever else you're going, then you're going to run into some traffic. But that's outside the bubble that I was living in when I was there.
Okay.
You know?
Now let's talk about rents. What were they a year ago? What are they today? And
Today,
what created that change? Today,
I hear they're dropping. And when I was there, I went to 7 different units, and the price range started at $15,000, which is about $280,
okay,
up to about $45,000, which is about $800 and some dollars.
Okay.
And those were all, each and every one of them was furnished to partially furnished. But I mean, it would get you in the door. When I lived in San Francisco, I lived in a smaller place, but I spent most of my time out in the city doing things. You're walking, you're in the parks, a lot of parks there. They had these parks there where the trees were anywhere from, let's say at least 100 years old, up to 400 years old in these trees. And when they developed this area, they built the shopping centers around these tree areas. And so there's a lot of nature that is still there in these parks where they had these groves of trees and they made that a park. They didn't cut it down. And each of these parks might be 300 or 400 yards from each other. So they're here and they're there. And I was in the Greenbelt area, which is kind of the upscale area of Makati.
Okay.
And when I went out walking, looking for apartments and things, I walked around a big circle there. And every one that's in these ones that I saw just from out walking. Nothing, I didn't look at anything advertised. I know I did see some advertised that were less, but I didn't know how to get there. And I didn't really care. I went out looking, I found some, enough to know what I wanted to know about housing there. And then there were some down around 13 that were unfurnished, but I didn't go there. But you could, if you're looking, you could probably save a little bit more money. So if you were going to go there, the thing to do might be to get a hotel or better yet, maybe an Airbnb, maybe a month. And the more walking and the more looking you do, the less expensive things are going to get.
And what created this big change? It's a big drop from a year ago.
Well, there is I forget what it's called, but there's a lot of Chinese, like 200,000, 220,000 of Chinese that were in the Philippines dealing with some kind of gambling and some other stuff.
Maybe it's called Pogo.
Pogo, that were asked to leave. That created a lot of vacancies.
Because that's where they were centralized, was there in the Makati,
That's one of the
areas. Yeah, okay.
And then not only that, but they still have a lot of new ones coming out of the ground. So not only do you have a lot of vacant ones, and then a lot of these were just being rented. So it's the rental market where the prices are coming down. So whatever I saw at 15, I'm sure is less now. But the thing is, when you see a really good deal like that, you have to do it then. So when you come, you got a general idea of what it would be in that area. You can kind of look at Facebook and just get a concept. And when you get here, get yourself a place for a little bit, and then you find that place that works best for you. And I heard no chickens the whole time I was there. Some people have puppies and dogs, but none of that kind of noise. The noise level reminded me of when I lived in San Francisco. I was on the 16th floor on the top of Nob Hill. And there's just traffic, or there's just city noise. It sounds like a babbling brook.
Okay.
Just white noise out there.
What city would you compare it to in America? You say it's a financial district, so is it like Manhattan?
I would say its closest would represent Manhattan because there's a lot of taller buildings. The average building there, probably in this area, the average condo is probably 25 stories high. Some higher, some not so high.
So for a single guy, not a guy with 4 kids going to school, because that's those dynamics, but for a single guy coming to the Philippines for the first time, I used to tell people, because I've never been, and I learned something the other day when we had this conversation, which is really my motivation for sharing it with the viewers, is that I always said Cebu was a great place because it had all these conveniences and it was the proverbial soft landing. Yeah. But I think I'm changing my tune now, that if you fly into Manila from who knows where and you land there, it's what you say, a 20, 30-minute grab ride into town,
Yeah.
or into your hotel or your Airbnb.
Well, you could get Airbnbs right there where I was at, in Makati, in BGC. Okay, and BGC and Makati are kind of they're kind of Makati, BGC, and then you have another area in between, but they're all part. You could walk from one to the other, literally. I mean, it would take you a couple hours, but you could literally walk. And then outside of that is the city. To the south, you have Laguna. To the west, you have, if you look out, you can see Corregidor. You can see Bataan. To the north, you're going to have Quezon City. To the east, I'm not really sure what was to the east of it. But you're in this little bubble. And my friend told me that his wife's brothers came, and they were wearing basketball clothes, which could be, and the security of the police stopped them. What are you doing here? And so the police are very on top of anything that could be going on, or possibly be younger people who shouldn't be there.
Gotcha. So you felt safe there.
Yeah. When I was there, literally, I would see women walking around, probably in their 40s, 50s, carrying a bunch of bags at 11 o'clock at night. Not a care in the world. People at the park with their kids in the daytime. I mean, it's just, it's everything you could hope for if you like city living. It's there.
Yeah, that's the key. City living and condo or high-rise living.
What got me the most when I got there was how Western it was.
Really?
I mean, everything is just Western. And I mean, you could probably, if you were in a wheelchair, go from one side to the other, because they have all the ramps. The sidewalks are perfect. Reminded me of San Diego.
Interesting.
And the sidewalks and all that kind of stuff. Clean. I didn't smell smog a single day. I wasn't coughing. It was just nice. And it wasn't too hot.
What about English?
Everybody spoke English.
Better than here in Dumaguete?
Oh, yeah.
Better than anywhere else you've ever been?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Because I imagine, from what I've Googled, the biggest influx of expats, AKA foreigners, is Manila. And that's where this is located. If
you're from a city or a medium-sized town, you could go there and you would be very comfortable very quickly. I mean, within days. Okay, you would be just like, this is cool. Okay, and then as you're nervous about getting out into the province and those kind of things, you could take your time. You've landed. You have very little culture shock, and then the transportation's awesome. Everything's great, and then just branch out. Go up to Baguio. Go up to Subic Bay, spend a couple of days. Go to different places. Go to Tagaytay. Go to Dumaguete. Go to Cebu, and then you can branch out. But you're starting at a point where you have little or no culture shock.
Right. I think that's one of the biggest sticking points for guys that move over here is they'll move here to my little town of Sleepy Dumaguete, and they'll find that it's very complicated to try to find a proper apartment. Very complicated because of supply and demand. I mean, there's a big demand and a small supply
because
out here.
Of you.
Because of I hear that more than I want to. So, anyway, it sounds like the opposite is the factor in Makati, BGC.
Okay, well,
all these Chinese guys been given the heave-ho, and they were renting all these places, and they're gone, so there's a lot of vacancies. I understand the prices aren't coming down. That's the real estate mentality of owners, but the rents have to come down because supply and demand is mass gonna win every time.
Well, some of those condominiums are financed. Okay.
Yeah.
And people have bought them as investments, and they gotta rent it for enough to cover the rent.
Right.
Or at least minimize their negative cash flow.
Right.
The thing that struck me as I'm walking down the street, and it's beautiful, is that most of the negative things that people say about the Philippines, dirty, or the sidewalks are uneven, trip hazards, all those kinds of things that you hear, none of that was there.
Brownouts.
None.
Zero.
Yeah, that's the soft landing of it all. You don't have that.
Got it.
And as you branch out, I've gotten used to it. I was stuck in the province, so I didn't have a choice, but I got used to it. But I had very little interest of going to Makati or BGC, except that I wanted to do a video there about the cost of things. And I was very pleasantly surprised.
That was my question. Yeah, because you're a province guy. Again, you live outside of the big city, but as you have stated before, you're 20, 30 minutes away from an SM mall, from your little house. And I'll put a link to our previous video into this to go over for those that want to see how you live on $600 a month.
Yeah, and I mean, that's my basic budget. And if I want to go, I'm 25 minutes away from a cafe mocha at, in a coffee shop.
Got it. It's not that you only receive 600, you receive a lot more than that, but it's just what you choose to pay.
Well, you know, when I was asked to do a budget, okay, I'm building my little house.
Yeah.
Who builds houses? Nobody.
Right.
So why would I put that in my budget? I did a basic budget on what it would cost to get by, and then everything you can add on top of that. So that's where the 600 was coming from, assuming you spent 10,000 for rent.
Gotcha.
But Makati, it cannot be beat from any place that I've ever been, because I love Baguio as well, but nothing is as Western as, in my experience, as Makati and BGC.
Well, this is very informative to me. Like I said, I just wrote it off as too much money. And now that you and I had this conversation, I think my next little staycation that I take with the wifey is going to be right there to good old Makati and just hook up a hotel or an Airbnb. We never leave for a long time. We leave for 2 or 3 days, and we got to beat it back here to commitments that we have. But I really think that would be a serious consideration to me, even as I get older. Someplace that I might want to consider, and I would be doing myself and anyone else a disservice by at least not going to look at it. I unfortunately wrote it off before I had all the information. And you just provided me and anybody watching this with a whole bunch of information. You know who it's
perfect for?
Who?
It's perfect for the guys that want to come and find a much lower cost of living, but their wives are, I don't know. You bring your wife down and she's walking by this 2,000 square foot Louis Vuitton store, or maybe it's 3,000 square feet, and she's going to know that she's not too far from civilization.
Right, right.
You know? So if you can get her there, that's going to be half the battle, because she's going to go, oh, this is the Philippines. Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
And this could be my life here, living in an $800 a month penthouse when we spend $1,800 at home.
Right.
And you can live that lifestyle on average Social Security income.
So you get the $800 penthouse, which is big and it's got
furnished,
a balcony and
flat TVs.
You're not going to be feeling confined in a box or anything. I'm still not a big fan of high rises because of the elevators, but I'm sure I would be able to get over it if I was living in a penthouse. So I'm paying $800 a month rent. And what would you figure for me and May? You know, kind of have an idea as to what we do and how we roll.
Everything else probably the same.
About $2,000 a month.
Yeah, well, I think that you guys go to coffee where you go to coffee.
Right.
You do all these things, which I don't really know.
Uh-huh.
But I would say, you know, Starbucks is the same price there it is in Dumaguete.
Sure.
A lot of things are the same price as in Dumaguete. Food would be about the same price, maybe slightly less.
Interesting. Yeah. Yet I have the opportunity, if I wanted to, on an anniversary, to go out and blow $150 at Ruth Chris.
Or 200 or 300 if you want to.
Or 200 or 300 if I wanted to.
Yeah.
With the wifey.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that option.
It's
and I
there.
really think it's cool.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely going to be our next little trippy. Now let's get to the important thing here. You also document a lot of this stuff on your channel. And I'm going to put a link to your channel along with a link to our original video about your budget and how you managed to get by on such a low amount and what you've done to accomplish that, and how opposite it was of what you originally planned to do when you got here and how you adjusted and adapted. So what is the name of your channel?
Expensive Expat. That's
okay.
EX-pensive_expat. pensive is if you're driving 100 miles an hour and there's a fork in the road, and you have to make a decision on which way to go. That's being pensive. So I'm no longer that way, having been here for a while. That's where the expensive comes in. It's not, has nothing to do with money.
Okay.
And I've got probably 4 or 5 separate videos I did on Makati.
Awesome.
And the one video is nothing but rental units.
Awesome.
You can see all from the basic entry level to like, man, I couldn't live there, to the one that, oh, that's awesome. And everything in between. And they go so fast. I mean, they're not going to be available now, but it's going to give you an idea of what I found just by going out walking.
And one thing I want to add is what it's got Dumagetti beat on is seems to be a lot. Number 1, no broken sidewalks. Number 2, no barking dogs or roosters or chickens. It's going to be your normal city traffic sounds, the honking of horns, the cabs, kind of a Manhattan, New York, LA kind of sound. And I got a feeling it's just cleaner, safer, and possibly less expensive.
Could be less expensive.
The trade-off is that you're not going to have the nature, the beaches within 20 minutes. Is that a true statement or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But everything's a trade-off in life, right?
I'll tell you one little thing that really, probably the one single thing there was, they have cats. And these cats, they have food dishes everywhere. Somebody, the community gets together and feeds all these cats. The cats are beautiful, they're clean, they're not wild. And they're just, you just see them there laying there. People walking around them. The cats in these big open areas of these malls. Not indoors where it's all air conditioned, but the outdoor areas where all those 400-year-old trees I was talking about, and the little lakes and the, all that kind of stuff. And you see the koi fish, and just going out for walking there is, for me, was entertaining. It kept me busy.
One final question.
Yeah.
The big gripe that I get is that there's too many expats in Dumagetti. Okay, well, which I argue, but we won't go there. Are there a lot of expats in Makati that you saw?
There's a lot of Western people. I don't know if they're there because they work for one of the these major corporations, because it is the corporate center. It is the Wall Street of the Philippines there in Makati.
Okay.
So whether they work for one of those major companies, whether it's a major bank or whatever, I don't know. They didn't appear to be the typical hunchback, 80-year-old walking on a cane expat. They were,
in other words, they
younger
weren't me.
guys, 6 foot tall, with their families and their kids, and like me, yeah, and that kind of thing. They were like young families, but those were the typical, I think, again, it gets back to being a perfect place for husbands and wives who want to go and get a lower cost of living, and they can live the dream they can no longer afford in America.
Gotcha.
And they can live in an English-speaking, very, very safe area.
Well, Daryl, you've done a wealth of information here. I so appreciate you sharing your time with me. And why don't you say bye-bye to YouTube land?
Bye-bye to you, BLM.
And we'll put a link to your channel.
Thank you.
In the description. All right, boys and girls, we'll see you guys in the next video.